Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Thorough Newspaper Analysis, which is presented to you by Losico. So, today again, we will be discussing three articles for the day. The first article is from the Indian Express, which is titled as Article 32 and the Supreme Court. So, in this article, basically, it has been told as to what is the importance of Article 32 when it comes to the fundamental rights and the entire essence of the Constitution, and what has been the take of Supreme Court in exercising this or in providing this right of constitutional remedies to all the citizens under Article 32. Basically, all the articles today are very much related to the law, and that is why they're all very important for our exam. That is why it's really, really desirable that you all pay a good attention today. And on the second one, we have changing the discourse on victim jurisprudence, which is from the Hindu. So this article basically discusses as to what should be done specifically if we talk about the Indian criminal jurisprudence, so that the entire procedure for the trial and the justice delivery system is drawn up wherein the victim is made the center of all the discussions, and the entire attention is on providing the relief and to say compensation and all the other justice kinds of justice to the victims. Thirdly, constitutional fault lines. This is again from the Hindu, and this article discusses about the delay that has been taken up by the governor of Tamil Nadu in the very famous case, which was Rajiv Gandhi assassination case. So, as we know that the governor also has the pardoning power, so we'll discuss that into detail. And fourthly, we have the news in flash, wherein we'll be discussing the small and pointer news which are more important for our prelims exam. So if you're also preparing for the Judicial Services exam, you can definitely have a look at the Law Seeker courses that we have for you. So we are endorsing here the Law of the courses, which is the Judiciary Test Prep course. So it is a very amazing course. You can enroll yourself into it. The link is there in the description box to it, and you can also download free study material for yourself. With this, let's see what is the multiple choice question for the day. Which article of the Constitution of India is known as the heart and soul of the Constitution? Your options are first, Article 21, second, Article 19, third, Article 32, and fourth, Article 14. You can write down your answer in the comment section below. So, this is the descriptive question for the day. Discuss the changes that are needed to be made to make the criminal justice system in India more victim friendly. So, this question is based entirely on one of our articles that we'll be discussing today. So with this, let's start with the first article, which talks about Article 32 and the Supreme Court. So basically, the Supreme Court bench headed by Chief Justice of India, who is Sharad A. Bobde, in recent case of the journalist Siddique Kapan, if I'm not wrong, we just yesterday itself, I guess, or day before yesterday itself, we discussed about the case of this journalist Siddique Kapan, who was actually heading towards Uttar Pradesh for covering the Hathras rape, entire issue of the Hathras rape incident. But on the way itself, on his way, he was actually detained by the police officials under the charges of Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. And when we were discussing that the Supreme Court pays a lot of heed towards the personal liberty of the accused, then in that scenario, it is very much desirable that even the lower courts also pay much attention to this principle, and they must have given the bail to Siddique Kapan as well. But this is still under trial, it's going on. So basically, this journalist Siddique Kapan observes in this case, the Supreme Court has observed that it is trying to discourage individuals from filing petitions under Article 32 of the Constitution. So keeping this Siddique Kapan case in mind, the Supreme Court has observed that this kind of behavior, if the courts they at all take up this kind of behavior, it actually discourages the individuals to come up through Article 32 of the Constitution to the courts. Now, as we all know, but still, let's just take a small summary as to what do we mean by Article 32 of the Constitution, or actually what are the components of the Article 32 of the Constitution of India. So basically, Article 32 is known, or it basically deals with the right to constitutional remedies, or it also says that one has the right to move the Supreme Court by appropriate proceedings for the enforcement of the rights conferred in Part 3, that is fundamental rights of the Constitution. Now, one thing that we need to keep in mind is that this Article 32 is itself a fundamental right. As we know that fundamental rights start right away from Article 12 till Article 35. So the Article 32 also falls well within the purview of Part 3 of the Constitution. But then again, many a times it is said that Article 32 is a right which is fundamental for the exercise of the fundamental rights. So this statement might sound a bit tricky, but it is a very, very good statement which gives the entire essence of Article 32. So, for example, if you have any of the fundamental rights, be it right to equality, freedom of speech and expression, right to liberty, your religious rights, cultural rights, be it any right for that matter. So, if any activity or any act, be it of any person, any state, authority, or anyone, if any of these fundamental rights are abridged, then Article 32, which itself is a fundamental gives the power to that person or the victim to approach the Supreme Court directly. So this is how we understand that what is the important essence that has been given to the fundamental rights in the Constitution of India. So it was Dr. B.R. Ambedkar who, during the Constitutional Assembly debate, had referred to this article as the soul and heart of the Constitution of India. So many a times you might get confused as to Article 21 is the soul and heart of the Constitution of India. But if we see it intricately, then of course Article 21, which is right to life, is very, very, very important. But then again, if we try to understand that which is the other fundamental right that gives even more essence or even more power to this Article 21, so it is Article 32. So that is why Article 32 is the safeguarding agent of all the other fundamental rights. If at all you would be interested to read the Constitutional Assembly debates, then please refer that during that time, in the time of December 1948, Article 32 was referred to as Article 25. So please don't get confused. And if at all you go through any CAD volume, then please see to Article 25. This was just a point of clarification I thought I should be giving in here. Then the other members in the drafting committee also observed that it is a right, just what I said right now, that it is a right which is fundamental to all the fundamental rights. So as we know that these are the various fundamental rights that we have, the 6 of them: right to equality, freedom against exploitation, freedom of religion, cultural and educational rights, and right to constitutional remedies. And all our writs also fall under this right. So now let's understand as to, can the high courts be approached in cases of violation of fundamental rights? So yes, both the high courts and the Supreme Court can be approached for the violation or the enactment of fundamental rights through 5 kinds of writs. Now, as we know that under Article 226, though it must be noted that Article 226 is not a fundamental right, but Article 32 is. So Article 226 gives you the power, the right to move the High Court in case of violation of fundamental rights, and Article 32 gives you the right to move the Supreme Court directly for the violation of fundamental rights. So what have been the Supreme Court's recent observations on Article 32? Now, on this point, I would just want to ask you a small and tricky question. What do you think? Is it the High Court or the Supreme Court that has a greater jurisdiction when it comes to the rights in regards to the constitutional remedies? So if you know the answer, you can write it down in the comment section below. So what have been the Supreme Court's recent observations on Article 32? So in the recent case of Siddique Kapan, the court asked why the petitioners could not go to the High Court, and the Supreme Court has said that it is very much related to the fundamental right of liberty of the victim, victim as in the accused in here, who is Siddique Kapan, and that is why he should anyway have the right to move the High Court if he wants to enforce his fundamental rights. These are the 5 writs. You can also note them down, but I hope you must be already knowing about them: the habeas corpus, mandamus, certiorari, prohibition, and quo warranto. Now let's see that what have been its observations over the years. Now the 2 most important cases which are related to Article 32 are Romesh Thapar case and the ADM Jabalpur case. I'm very much sure that you must have heard about these cases. So in the case of Romesh Thapar versus State of Madras 1950, the Supreme Court had observed that Article 32 provides a guaranteed remedy. That is what the very essence of this article is, right? And then in the case of ADM Jabalpur versus SS Shukla in 1976, in this case it was held by the Supreme Court that in the time of emergency, a citizen actually loses his right to constitutional remedies under Article 32. So yes, this right gets suspended in the time of emergency. So you shouldn't be knowing this. So this was all for this article. Let's move towards the second article for the day, which talks about accountability of system for victims. Now in this article, we will be discussing as to how we should make our criminal jurisprudence or the criminal justice system more accountable and more answerable towards the victim. See, one thing that we need to understand in here is that whenever we have any kind of law, and specifically if we have any kind of like, if we have a civil law and then we have the criminal, like we have tort, etc., in the civil side, and we have the CRPC, IPC on the criminal side. So obviously we know that the civil one are more related towards providing compensation, and actually, compensating the victim is the main agenda in the civil laws. And in the criminal one, yes, compensation has become a part of it now, that we should also compensate the victim and take care that justice has been provided to him in all the right means. But in the criminal law, the main agenda had always been to punish the wrongdoer in order to give a message to the society, in order to deter the crime, right? But since the time a welfare state has been developed, now this is the very idea wherein, it is said that compensation is the vanishing point of the criminal jurisprudence, because this is the entire discussion in this article which we'll be discussing, that of course we need to punish the wrongdoer, we need to send a message in the society, we need to deter the crime. But what about the person who has been a victim of a particular crime? If at all you have given death sentence to the person who was accused, he has been convicted, and he has been given death sentence, yes, definitely it might send a message to the society that this crimes such crimes should not be taken up, and the society and the criminal system is very serious about these crimes. But in the real sense, or in the practical sense, has the victim been really given the justice? Yes, to some extent only. Because if at all there has been a huge damage to the victim, a huge loss that he or she has suffered, it can be any kind of loss, be it monetary loss, or be it physical loss, or mental loss, any kind of loss, then just punishing the wrongdoer is not something that would suffice the situation. And that is why it is very much desirable that we make our criminal justice system more accountable towards the victim as well, which means that victim should be the center of the entire criminal jurisprudence, and all the provisions should be such that ultimately favor the victim. So with the state, and in this, please don't construe that we should be not we should not be providing equal rights, or rights of legal aid, etc., to the wrongdoer or the convict or accused. Definitely that's not the case, because obviously it's their fundamental rights as well. So with the state firmly planted in the driver's seat, the engine of our criminal justice system runs full throttle in the name of justice. So basically it's the same point that we just discussed. And now let's understand that what are the victims' rights and needs. So the justice demands that with every possible measure of correction and rehabilitation of offenders, equal concern must be shown to the victims, as we just had discussed upon this. So the same thing can be achieved through a legislative recognition of the following. Now here are a few steps that have been given that must be taken care of, that can be taken care, so that we can be sure that the victim is also given equal attention in the entire trial procedure. Firstly, conceptualization of access to justice for victims. So we need to first make it an important concept that we have to provide the victim with the justice. Now, what kind of justice we are talking about in here? Viewing the access to justice not only as the directive principle under Article 39A, that is the legal aid, but also as the fundamental right under Articles 14 and 21. So obviously, as we know that fundamental rights are justifiable in the court of law, and that is why we should not only view that justice should be provided to the victim only through Article 39A, which is a DPSP. Rather, we should think that we have to provide justice to this particular victim in the light of Article 14, which is right to equality, and Article 21, which is to life and personal liberty. So there is an urgent need to strengthen the complaint mechanism, because many a times, as we know, that even many FIRs also go unheard. The police officials, many times they just deny to file an FIR, and there are various other constraints which are there in the complaint mechanism, and that is why it should be made more victim friendly and more approachable in such situations. And we should be creating victim friendly procedures that are aimed at providing the justice to the victim. Secondly, recognize the need for effective victim participation. Now, many a times what happens is that The only role that the victim takes up in our criminal jurisprudence or the trial system is of a witness, because obviously we know that the victim is the most authentic witness to a victim who has survived, is the most authentic witness to whatever mishappening has been taken up against him, right? For example, if there is a woman who has survived rape, so definitely she herself is also a witness of her own rape. Now in this situation, we many a times think that the only role that the victim would be playing in this trial is of being a witness to his own cause. But that is, a thinking that needs to be changed, and we need to move farther in the field of victim participation. And that is why we need to recognize the rights of victims to be heard at all appropriate stages of a trial, and which is currently a very limited participation. So not only just as a witness, but also through that victim should be given right to be heard in all the important stages of that particular trial. Now, thirdly, right to information, because obviously, it is very much important that the victim is well informed about what is happening in the court of law. He should be well informed as to what witnesses or what arguments is the opponent putting forward. Then he must be well informed as to when and how the accused has been put out on bail or parole. Because see, this is very much important for the life, safety, and security of the victim as well. Because, for example, if the accused who has the potential to harm the victim has been set out on bail, or either bail or parole, but the victim had absolutely no idea that this person, the accused, is out on bail and is actually roaming around freely. Now, in such a scenario, there might be a chance that the victim is not very careful in securing himself or his life or his relatives' life or his property, and the accused causes harm to his life or property. Now, in such a situation, it is very much desirable that the victim knows about the status of the case so that he can act accordingly. So, here are some points that the victim should be aware about their role in the criminal justice procedure. Then, what they can expect from the criminal justice system as to what are the best of the outcomes that they can get. Like, for example, I'll give you a very simple example. For example, you go to a shop and you buy a particular product. Now, if at all you're not aware about the actual value of that product, you might end up paying extra for that product, or even might end up paying uh, for a wrong product. So that is why it is very much essential that you know particularly about a particular shop, a particular product, and as to what exactly would you be getting in return. So that is how the criminal justice system also works, wherein the victim should be aware as to what all are his rights, and what can be the best of the compensation or best of the remedies that he can avail through the court. Then he should be aware of the status of the trial, their other rights and entitlements as a victim of crime, and the right to information in turn enables their access to other rights as well, because obviously when they're informed they can work in the direction of other rights too. And fourthly, right to protection. So the victim must be kept abreast of all the developments, which ultimately, is his right to information as well. So in the trial process, which may potentially compromise their security, as we just discussed in the previous discussion, and also a complete of this. Intimation of the hearing and changing nature of the accused custody, including his release on bail or parole. So, for example, Section 15A of the SC/ST Atrocities Act, it also mentions a complete procedure for this thing. And the witness protection, such as the relocation and change in identity through the witness protection scheme, should be taken up. Fifthly, the concept of assistance. So, as we know that under the 1985 UN Declaration of Basic Principles of Justice for victims of crime and abuse of power needs to be recognized. So herein a lot of such steps have been introduced in this UN declaration, which talk about assisting the victim at various stages. Now this can be mental assistance, medical assistance, financial assistance, health assistance. It can be any kind of a legal aid, anything for that matter. And that is why the role of NGOs and also the state assistance, like in the case of medical, psychological, financial, and material other kind of assistance, is very necessary. And sixthly and finally, compensation and restitution, which are very important, obviously. And one thing that has been told in this article is that the right to compensation and the right to restitution are two different things. And that is why it should not be thought that, okay, fine, the victim has been compensated, so it also means that he has been restituted. These are two separate rights, though many times they are used interchangeably, but still it should not be done. And according to the victim compensation scheme, article section 357A of the CRPC, please mind it is CRPC, not CPC. So here the state is bound that it would be providing compensation to the victim, and that is why it should be taken care of. Now, with this, let's discuss the last article for the day, which talks about the inordinate delay by constitutional authorities. Basically, the governor of Tamil Nadu, Banwari Lal Purohit, has continued to withhold his decision on an application seeking pardon by AG Perari Valan, one of the 7 prisoners convicted in the Rajiv Gandhi assassination case. As we know, that Rajiv Gandhi assassination case is also a very important case in counting the rarest of the rare cases when it comes to the capital punishment in India. And very recently, one of the one of the prisoners of the 7 prisoners who were actually sentenced, in this case. So one of them, whose name is AG Pararivalan, he actually had filed a pardon petition to the governor of Tamil Nadu. So in this case, even the Council of Ministers and the Supreme Court had observed that while hearing a connected writ petition, that the governor should take a decision, right? And the Council of Ministers already had passed a resolution in favor of releasing all 7 prisoners. And basically, the Council of Ministers had said that they have had enough of their imprisonment, their term, okay, and now they can be actually given pardon. So basically, the final job or the final deed actually has to be done by the governor of Tamil Nadu. But it has been a significant time since the governor has been lagging this issue and has not been taking any action, be it in favor or against of this entire matter. So this inaction by the government now has given rise to constitutional fault lines. Now, what basically we mean by the fault line is that some kind of cracks, some kinds of gaps that are there in the constitutional setup within the executive arm of the government. So here there are some rulings of the Apex Court which actually give a clearer idea as to what are the powers of the governor or the government in regard to the pardon or other kinds of commutation or related to the punishment. So, in the case of Maru Ram versus Union of India, it was held that the pardoning power under Article 72, as we know that this Article 72 is with the president, and 161 of the Constitution, which is with the governor, can be exercised by the central and the state governments, not by the president or the governor on their own. Now, this is a very important issue and something that actually clears up our mind. Earlier, generally, if we see, we used to think, I think even sometime before even I used to think that it is a sole power either with the president, like in the case of Article 72, and with the governor in the case of Article 161. But in the case of Maruram versus Union of India, it was very much held that this power, the pardoning power under these articles, it can be exercised by the central government and the state governments, and it cannot be done only and solely by the president or the governor. And that is why the involvement of the government, be it the center in the case of the president and the state in the case of the governor, is necessary. So the advice of government binds the head of the state. Now, this is very important, that whatever the advice, now who will give the advice? Obviously, the Council of Ministers, COMs, will be giving the advice. And this advice is actually the one that binds the head of the state. Who is the head of the state? The president. And if we talk about the in the state, particularly state value, it's the governor. So, Shatrughan, in the case of Shatrughan Chauhan versus Union of India, it was laid down. It laid down the principle of presumption of dehumanizing effect of such delay, and it said that it actually is something that should be totally stopped, and such delays are not very healthy for the criminal justice system in taking decisions on mercy petitions. Then, in the case of Kisham Megha Chandra Singh versus Honorable Speaker, it was held that governors, like speakers, considered themselves to be unanswerable for their actions. Now, very recently, when many cases for the anti-defection or defection had also come up, it had been observed that many a times some speakers also thought that they were not really answerable for their actions. And in this case, it is said that even, just like speakers, the governors also many a times tend to think that they are not answerable for their actions. But the Supreme Court was asked to examine the speaker's inaction with regard to disqualification proceedings. And in the similar light, the Supreme Court can also examine the acts of the governor, just like in this case of, this Rajiv Gandhi assassination case has been taken up. And then in the case of Rajendra Singh Rana versus Swami Prasad Maurya, it was held that failure on the part of the speaker to decide the application seeking a disqualification cannot be said to be merely in the realm of procedure. Now, please don't get confused that why are we now altogether jumping to the speaker. Basically, in this case, in the Keshav Meghachandra case, the position of speaker and governor in this regard, that whether Supreme Court will have the jurisdiction to make them answerable or not, whether the government has the right to interfere or not, that has been actually equated. And that is why the cases which are in the similar line related to the speakers, we will be taking them just like that. They're also talking about the governor. So that is why this is the entire issue. So then it says that delay by the governor is a concern. So according to the 15th Legislative Assembly of Tamil Nadu, so this 15th Legislative Assembly of Tamil Nadu, and consequently the Council of Ministers will end in May 2021. So if at all this delay is taken up to that level, then all the efforts that were taken by the government or whatever will go all in vain. And that is why a quick decision is really desirable from the side of governor. So that is why this calls for an immediate interference of the Supreme Court, for it otherwise would render the resolution passed by the Council of Ministers and words contained in Article 161 of the Constitution will actually have no effect. And that is why it is very important that the words or the advice given by the Council of Ministers is very much listened to by the governor and it is acted upon in a similar fashion. Now let's see, what do we have for news in flash today? Firstly, Madhya Pradesh planning law against love jihad. So Madhya Pradesh government is planning a law that will have provisions for 5-year imprisonment for love jihad. Now, just yesterday we discussed that there are some states who are coming up for drafting and bringing up some laws against this so-called what they call as love jihad, which is more of like a political issue. But basically, this was stated by the State Home Minister Narottam Mishra. So these cases will be registered under non-bailable sections, and for voluntary conversion of marriage. For marriage, it will be mandatory to apply to the collector a month in advance. So this was all for today. We hope it was a good session for you. Stay tuned with Law Seekho for such more sessions to come. Thank you so much.